Hey everybody, welcome to the videos for my final thoughts for week 10 of the NFL season over on Draftkings. And yes, I am switching it up a bit this week. I've not done a final thoughts video in quite some time. I did it early on in the season, but I kind of got away from that. But I want to start doing them once again because I like having the spreadsheet on my screen here. I think it's interesting to look at, and I find it very helpful. And I just like having one video to end the week to have all my final thoughts wrapped up into one video instead of spreading it across multiple videos. So hopefully you find this helpful, and if you do, please leave a like on the video. And if you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. It really helps me out, and I really do appreciate that. And YouTube tells me around 50% of the people watching these videos have not yet subscribed. So if you haven't taken the time to do that yet, I really do appreciate it. Without further ado, let's dive right into it. And as always, we'll start with the quarterback position, and not really much has changed. I think everyone on this list was on the first look video besides Josh Allen, so I'm not going to go too in-depth on everybody here. But let's talk about Josh Allen first at $7,500. So the thing is, like the matchup versus Arizona, overall, I think this is the best game on the slate. The over-under has not lost any steam. It's still at 56.5, and there's been quite a few games that have definitely lost points off of their total, so it's nice to see that game holding strong. And look, I just love this game, so I definitely want exposure to it. Now, the thing with Josh Allen is he's a very matchup-sensitive quarterback. Like, when he gets a really soft matchup, he tends to perform very well. And we saw that last week versus Seattle, had over 400 passing yards, was absolutely excellent. But when he gets tougher to more average matchups, he doesn't always deliver the best results. Now, I know early in the season versus the Rams, they don't have a bad defense, he had a very good game versus them, so I'm not saying it's like an absolute lock. He can't play good versus good defenses. In Arizona, they're not like a great defense, they're more so average. But I didn't have him on the video earlier on the week, and I kind of regret that because as of right now, he's been trending up for me, and he's one of my favorite, actually, quarterbacks to use on this slate just because I love this game. They're 2.5-point dogs on the road, and we have 56.5-point over-under. So there should be a lot of points to be scored here, and he offers you some rushing upside as well. So I'm definitely in on Josh Allen. Now, if you want to see how the Cardinals have done versus the past this season, they're 11th EVOA, which is actually pretty good, and they're only allowing 20.2 Draftkings points per game to quarterbacks, which is 14th best or fewest in the league, and less than 2 passing touchdowns per game. So, not exactly the softest matchup in the world, but Josh Allen, he's a great fantasy quarterback. He runs the ball quite a bit, only averaging about 30 rushing yards per game, and I say only, that's actually pretty good for a quarterback. When you compare that to someone like Kyler Murray, who's getting about 70 rushing yards per game, it's not going to look as good, but we know he's capable of getting rushing touchdowns, over half a rushing touchdown per game, and overall, some very strong numbers this season from Josh Allen. He's had multiple games over 35 fantasy points, so I definitely like the upside. He's getting around 300 passing yards per game and nearly 9 yards per attempt. He's got Stefan Diggs to get the ball to, so I'm definitely in on Josh Allen here, and he actually is trending to be one of my favorite quarterbacks on the slate, and I think he's definitely one of the best cash game options as well. But then we'll go all the way up to Kyler Murray on the other side of this game. Nothing really has changed for me. He's still the best running quarterback in football right now. I know Lamar Jackson exists, but he has certainly not looked nearly as good as he was last year. Maybe defenses are figuring him out. I don't know what it is, but Kyler Murray is certainly QB1 this year. I guess you could throw in Patrick Mahomes in there as well, but when you get the rushing floor of Kyler Murray, it just makes him such a super safe play every single week. Because if he's not on his game through the air, he can definitely make that up on the ground. But the thing is, he's having great passing games so far this year too, averaging about 270 passing yards per game and 2 passing touchdowns. And like I said, I mean, his rushing ability is just unmatched by anybody this year. About double-digit rushing attempts per game, a rushing touchdown per game, and he almost has a 2-touchdown built-in floor every single week, passing touchdown floor, because he's averaging about 70 rushing yards per game. And if he was averaging 80 rushing yards, that would be a built-in 2 passing touchdown floor push every single week just on the ground. So I'm definitely in on Kyler Murray here, and if you had the money for him, I would certainly try to get him in. I'd say the top 2 quarterbacks on the week are Kyler Murray and Josh Allen. And the way this week is, you can certainly afford to spend up for a quarterback, and you can certainly afford to spend up on multiple studs because we have plenty of value on this slate. Mike Davis is free at $4,000. He's going to be the workhorse back for the Panthers, and we've seen multiple games where he's excelled in that role this year, so you can just plug him in. David Johnson's more than likely going to be out. It's going to be a stretch for him to play, so we have Duke Johnson. He's going to be in a 3-down role for the most part at $5,000. Aaron Jones is underpriced. And we have some cheaper wide receivers as well, like Grant from Miami. He's only $3,000, so you can pretty much play whoever you want. So I do think this is a very fun slate. So if you want to pay up for Kyler Murray, I have no issue with that at all. I don't typically love spending $8,000 on a quarterback, but these spend-up QBs this year have definitely been paying off because they're just putting up so much more points than the guys that are priced in the lower range and the mid-range. So it's definitely been worth paying up for quarterback, and this is one of those weeks where it's quite easy to do so. And Buffalo's defense has not been that great this season, so I'm not going to go into all the numbers because I already went over this in my first look video, but I'm just going to try to give some updated thoughts on these guys. Aaron Rodgers, The point still stands. I said earlier in the week he was more of a GPP play, and I still stand by that because they are 13.5-point favorites, which means they're probably not going to have to be into a situation where it's going to be a shootout and Aaron Rodgers is going to have to just air it out all game long. That's why I'm just kind of strictly on Aaron Jones this week. Now, you can play Aaron Rodgers in tournaments, and I also love Devonte Adams. Devonte Adams is an excellent cash game play. Just because they are 13.5-point favorites does not mean Devonte Adams cannot get there. We saw that last week versus the 49ers where they were killing them. Still fine, had almost 200 receiving yards, so... But I still view Aaron Rodgers as a tournament play just because Kyler Murray, Josh Allen, Deshaun Watson, Jared Goff, Drew Lock, these guys are all going to be in competitive games. As you can see, if you take out Aaron Rodgers, the biggest spread we have is 3.5 points, and that's for Watson. So I always like getting quarterbacks in back-and-forth games. But in tournaments, Rodgers, excellent play versus the 32nd ranked DVOA pass defense. So worst pass defense in the league so far, according to their rankings. So definitely like Rodgers in tournaments, but for only $100 more, I can get Kyler Murray, who offers us rushing upside, and it's going to be a very competitive game. Josh Allen, I talked about him. Deshaun Watson, $6,900. So I think he's a very strong tournament play, but you can play him in cash games as well. But when I was looking at ownership projections, I was assuming Deshaun Watson was going to be one of the more highest owned quarterbacks on the slate. Now, these ownership projections could be wrong, but he's not getting a ton of love. And I'm not sure if that's due to Duke Johnson potentially being chalky and people don't want to play a running back and quarterback on the same team together, which I get. But Duke Johnson is a capable pass catcher, so it's not like it's the worst combination in the world. But I'm a Browns fan. It's on my shirt right now, but their pass defense sucks. Like they've been awful this year. So Deshaun Watson, I'm fully expecting to have a very, very strong game. And if he's going to be low owned, I think that makes him a very good tournament option. Now, when I say low owned, I don't mean like he's going to be like super low owned, but compared to the other guys like Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, I imagine, and Jared Goff, I think all those guys are going to be higher than Deshaun Watson, and we know his upside. He's got Will Fuller and Brandon Cooks to get the ball to. Duke Johnson's a capable pass catching running back. Now, the one concern here is that this over-under has dropped, I believe, early on the week. Now, don't quote me on it, but I want to say it was at 52. It might have been at 50, but I think it was at 52. And it's now down to 47.5, which does give me some concern. Because that certainly fell down quite a bit, but it's a great matchup versus Cleveland. They've had one of the worst pass defenses in football this year. And Deshaun Watson, he's been hot for over a month now, averaging nearly 300 passing yards per game. Just missed 300 yards last week, so he could have kept his stretch to 5 games. That stretch ended, but they're 20th DVA versus the pass. They're 21st versus quarterbacks. I mean, Deshaun Watson should have a very strong game here, and his stacking options are quite clear. You just use... I was going to say Deshaun Watson. You use Will Fuller and Brandon Cooks, and you could even use Duke Johnson as well because he's going to be involved as a pass catcher. So I'm definitely in on Deshaun Watson here. I think he's one of the best quarterbacks to use on this slate. Maybe better suited for tournaments because the ownership looks like it's going to be low. And cash games, I mean, I totally understand just wanting to go with Kyler Murray, Josh Allen. That game should be the nuts for fantasy purposes. It's got about 10 more points on their over-under, so should be more scoring opportunities in that game. But I like Watson in tournaments, and I think he's underpriced too in a good matchup versus Cleveland. Jared Goff, 6,500. This is simply just like flowchart. You just pretty much play quarterbacks versus Seattle. I know it did not work out for Jimmy G that one day, but Josh Allen just put up around 40 points versus them, and just so far this season, they're historically bad. They're giving up nearly 400 passing yards per game to quarterbacks, which is absolutely insane. The most points per game, 30.4, nearly 400 passing yards per game. They suck versus quarterbacks. So Jared Goff, 6,500. I think that's a really nice mid-range play. I can definitely see people going his way. And it's pretty easy who to stack him with. You could either go Cooper Kupp, who's just a little bit banged up, but he's fully expected to be good to go. And you have Robert Woods as well. So I'm definitely in on those Jared Goff and 2 Rams wide receiver stacks this week. And it's just the nuts matchup versus Seattle. They give it the most points per game to quarterbacks and wide receivers this season. And now we have Drew Lock as our value quarterback. Now, just going to be honest here, I have no intentions on playing a value quarterback this week. I think there's way too many good spend-up quarterbacks. The lowest I'm willing to go really is Jared Goff. I think it's quite easy to spend up a quarterback, and those guys' ceilings it makes me feel a lot better paying up for quarterback this week. But Drew Lock, he did score around close to 40 Draftkings points last week versus the Falcons. Now, it took him quite a while to get there because he was awful in the first half. I want to say like 3 points. Ended up absolutely crushing in the second half, and Atlanta's just been so bad versus quarterbacks. This is actually a sneaky game for fantasy purposes. I actually think this one could pop off, and there's definitely a lot of good tournament options here. Now, I'm not expecting Drew Lock to repeat his nearly 40 fantasy point game, but he's been throwing the ball over 40 times per game, I believe, the past 3 weeks, and this is a good matchup versus the Raiders. They're 26th DVA versus the pass, and they're 25th versus quarterback. So if you need a cheap quarterback this week for some reason, I really don't see why you would need one, just because there's so much value at the skill positions this week, and a tight end. Tight end's free too. Like Ingram's 45, Goddard's 42, Hooper's below 4K. Like, I just don't see the reason to have to spend down here. But Locke in a 50.5 point over-under game, 4-point dogs. He's got Judy, Noah Fant to get the ball to, Tim Patrick. I don't think he's the worst play in the world if you need value, but again, I really don't see why you'd need it. Then we'll move on to the running back position, and I think most people in cash games this week, and you'll see this in my lineup building video, I assume the meta way to go at cash games this week is Aaron Jones paired with Duke Johnson at RB2 and Mike Davis in the flex. And that certainly allows a lot of flexibility in your lineups. And that's what I was saying. You don't have to spend down for quarterback this week. Like, it should not be an issue. And you can easily fit in Devonte Adams. Like, I was just playing around with the cash game build, and I threw in Aaron Jones, Devonte Adams, like a Kyler Murray. And I still had some salary left over in a lineup that I liked. So, again, not hard this week. But Aaron Jones, I don't see how you fade him here. It's a smash spot versus Jacksonville. He's a 13.5 point favorite at home. They have a team total above 31 this week. It should be just smash city for Aaron Jones. And he's underpriced. Like, he should be closer to 8K. 7,100 is just way too cheap for him. He's one of the best running backs in football. He's a capable pass catcher. He's got a target share around 20% this season, just slightly below that at 17%. In Jacksonville, they're 21st DFS versus the run, giving up over 100 rushing yards per game. I don't see how you really fade Aaron Jones in cash games and tournaments. There's some other spend-up running backs, but even then, it's just such a good spot for Jones. I'm definitely in on him this week, and I don't think we have to worry about him being injured because he was heavily used in that Thursday night game. Now, they were killing them, but I mean, he's too cheap for me. I think he should totally be, if he was around, even if he was around 8K, I would still be interested. So at 7,100, of course, I'm in. James Robinson, 6,600 on the opposite side of this game. Point still stands from what I said early on in the week. I think he's a better tournament play than a cash game play just because they are about 14-point dogs on the road, and they only have a team total of 18. So they can certainly get to a position where they have to abandon the run. Now, James Robinson has been involved in the passing game as well, so it's not like he'd be completely dead if they fall behind this much, which I could definitely see being the scenario because the Packers have been playing very well this season. They've been putting up quite a bit of points. The Jaguars are not the best team in the world, but James Robinson has been very good, and if you drafted him in fantasy this year, which I got him with my last pick, he's definitely put up like a fantasy MVP type of season relative to where he was drafted. Like, he's been awesome. And he should be good here. Like, this is a good matchup versus Green Bay, and the volume's going to be there every single week, around 4 targets per game and over 16 carries per game, so you're kind of locked into getting around 20 touches. And the Packers are giving the second most points per game to running backs, 35 points per game, and 60 receiving yards per game as well, and about 100 rushing yards. So James Robinson, this is a good spot for him. The only concern here is that they could fall behind and have to abandon the run. That's why I think he's a better tournament option, but the matchup is definitely fantastic. Miles Sanders, 6,400. He got a full practice in, so he should be good to go versus the Giants, barring any setbacks. And it's a good spot for him. And on the season, in the games that he's played, he's been pretty good for the most part, averaging about 90 rushing yards per game, 6.1 yards per carry, although maybe that's skewed a little bit off that 70-yard touchdown he had versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. But we know he's a good running back. He's going to be involved in the passing game, which gives him a nice floor. And Carson Wentz certainly likes getting him the ball. Boston Scott had a good game versus the Giants early on this season. And then I think we can all agree that Miles Sanders is better than Boston Scott. So at $6,400, I definitely like Sanders here. And if David Johnson would happen to play, I would assume most people, instead of going Aaron Jones, Duke Johnson, Mike Davis, it would be Aaron Jones, Miles Sanders, and Mike Davis. So I'm definitely on Sanders this week. He's kind of like my fourth favorite running back, and it's a good matchup versus the Giants. They're 27th versus running backs this season, and Sanders, he's just a dual threat. So I think he's a bit underpriced. Duke Johnson, $5,000. Sounds like David Johnson's not going to be good to go for this game. And on the season, he's got about a 10% target share. And then Duke Johnson himself has about an 8% target share. So if you kind of give David Johnson's numbers to Duke Johnson, we're looking at somewhat close to a 20% target share. Not saying that's exactly what's going to be in this game, but we know he's a capable pass-catching running back. And it's also a revenge game versus Cleveland. I don't know if he cares too much about that, but it's always a good narrative, and he's going to be in a 3-down role here. He's going to be the main running back. I assume he's going to play the vast majority of the snaps here. Now, the matchup versus Cleveland, they actually don't suck versus running backs. They're more so mid-range, but he should get there at $5,000. It's kind of a similar play to Giovanni Bernard a few weeks ago, if you guys remember that. And Mike Davis, $4,000. He's the free square. I don't think I really have to explain this. He's going to be heavily involved in the passing game, although the games that he started before Christian McCaffrey came back, like at the very beginning, he was super involved in the passing game. I remember he had a game with 10 targets. He was getting 9 targets, 8 targets a game. And then the couple of weeks before Christian McCaffrey came back, he was just kind of like a ghost in the passing game, but I would assume he should see targets in this game. On the season, he's averaging over 5 targets per game, and you got to keep in mind that can be skewed a little bit because of the weeks that Christian McCaffrey played or the week that he came in late. Either way, Mike Davis, free play. You don't really have to go too in-depth there. Now, the matchup sucks versus Tampa Bay. There's no denying that. But a guy that should see close to 20 touches here, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are getting up over 6.5 catches per game to running backs, which is very tops in the league. So that sits really well with a guy like Mike Davis, who's a capable pass catcher. So I don't think you really have to have a reason to play Mike Davis besides Christian McCaffrey being out. But I think, like, I know on the ground it's a sucky matchup versus Tampa Bay, but he should be able to get some catches and he'll be fine. He's $4,000. He should be like 90% in a cash game, so really, who cares what he does anyway? I would just eat the chalk and get different somewhere else. And then we'll move on to the wide receiver position, which there's a lot of good wide receivers on this slate. Devonte Adams, I don't think I really have to explain this one. I kind of already mentioned it with Aaron Rodgers, but it's the worst pass defense in football. The games that Devonte Adams has been healthy in this season, he has like one bad game, and you got to keep in mind he still scored around 12 points, but Aaron Rodgers just wasn't having the best game. But besides that, like 45, 45, 46, 30-something, like he has just been so good. 35% target share in the season. I don't have to explain Devonte Adams. I don't think it's a pretty obvious play, and it's not that hard at all to fit him in. Like, I know $9,000 for a wide receiver, you're probably a little bit scared about that, and I was early on the week, but building lineups, it's not hard at all to fit in Adams, and I actually made a lineup with Jones, Adams, Kyler Murray, and I threw in a guy like Cooper Kupp or Robert Woods or something, and it was still not that bad. So I'm definitely in on Adams, and I'd try to find a way to get him in your cash lineups because he's just crushing this year. Now, Stefan Diggs, he did not make my early in the week video, but since I like Josh Allen now, I'm going to be in on Stefan Diggs at $7,500. Now, the matchup versus Arizona, they've actually been stingy versus wide receivers. Or early on in the season they were, but since they played the Seattle Seahawks that one week where Tyler Lockett went absolutely off, and then in the recent games, that numbers have actually got them to 20th versus wide receivers. Like early on the season, they were actually not allowing many points per game. But ever since that Seattle game, those numbers have definitely gotten worse for them. And they're now 20th versus wide receivers, but they are 11th DVA versus the pass. But Stefan Diggs, he's the clear wide receiver one in this offense. And look, about 7 catches per game, about 10 targets per game, a 30% target share. It's Stefan Diggs. He's having a very good season, and I would be surprised if he does not have a big game. He's the obvious pairing option with Josh Allen. You could even throw in John Brown as well, who did good last week, but I just didn't really like John Brown this week, but I think he's a fine tournament option. Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, these guys are pretty much the same play, a $300 difference. Cooper Kupp, he's been the more targeted wide receiver this season with around 9 targets per game. Meanwhile, Robert Woods is below 6, but both have So Cooper Kupp's at a 26% target share. Robert Woods is at a 19.8% target share. But these guys are very, very similar plays. And I do like this game for fantasy purposes. Now, I did lose a point on the total. I believe it was at 55.5 early on the week. Now it's at 54.5, but only a 1.5 point spread here. The Seahawks defense is so bad. They're dead last versus quarterbacks. They're dead last versus wide receivers. And they're allowing 63.2 points per game to wide receivers and nearly 300 receiving yards per game just to them. So Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, obvious pairing options with Jared Goff, and I don't think I have to really go too in-depth there. It's obviously a really good matchup. Tyler Lockett, 6,500. Same position as early on the week. Is DK Metcalf a better wide receiver? Yes, easily. DK Metcalf is absolutely awesome. He's going to be a stud for years to come. But Lockett's at a price point now where it's getting pretty hard not to just jam him in your lineup at $6,500. Now, I know he's had a few disappointing games this season, and actually 3 out of his past 4 games have been very disappointing. But don't forget, he's got plenty of upside. He did that 55, 56 fantasy point game versus the Cardinals on Sunday Night Football, went absolutely off. He went off versus Dallas early on the season. He had some good games before that. So he's not like just a... I don't want to say he's not a boom-bust guy because he's kind of been a boom-bust guy, but he's had some consistent games in there as well. But he's definitely not been as consistent as DK Metcalf, which is kind of weird. You think Lockett would be the super consistent guy with DK Metcalf being the boom-bust guy. That's not really been the case, but $6,500, he's always going to draw the softer coverage between him and DK Metcalf just because a guy like Metcalf's going to obviously garner the attention of the defense. The guy's an absolute monster. He's really fast. I think we know that. But Lockett's getting around 9 targets per game, close to a touchdown per game, a 24% target share. Now, the Rams, they've been a little bit stingy versus wide receivers, no denying that. Second fewest points allowed per game, but in the slot, he's going to see the softer coverage here versus Troy Hill. He's actually got one of the biggest wide receiver versus cornerback matchup advantages of the week. I like the price tag on Lockett. Is he going to burn me for the 4th time in the past 5 weeks? Maybe, but I do like that price point. And he's a fine run back with Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. And then going down below, we have Christian Kirk at $5,700. And personally, you don't have to play wide receiver with Kyler Murray just because his rushing ability makes him a super safe play. You can definitely play him naked, similar to Lamar Jackson last year. But Kyler Murray definitely gets points to his wide receivers, and Christian Kirk has been playing very well the past few weeks. He's been scoring 20 fantasy points, and he's been getting involved in the offense. He's been scoring touchdowns, so Christian Kirk, on a point per dollar basis, I would say I like him over DeAndre Hopkins, but I don't really like saying that because DeAndre Hopkins can certainly put up 40 fantasy points at any given notice. But for $5,700, I want to allocate my funds up top to Devonte Adams. If you don't want to play Adams, yeah, you could go Hopkins in tournaments, then Diggs, those kind of guys. But for the most part, I'm going to try to get up to Adams, so I'm not going to probably be able to spend it for DeAndre Hopkins as well. So Christian Kirk, he's a fine mid-range wide receiver. Buffalo has not been the best pass defense this year, or just overall defense, and I like this game for fantasy purposes. It's just as simple as that. You're getting the cheaper wide receiver of the two on the Cardinals. Brandon Cooks, 5,600. Similar to Deshawn Watson, doesn't look like he's getting a ton of ownership this week, which is, again, it's not something I really understand because, again, I like the Browns, but I can put away my bias here, and their pass defense, it sucks. I know Denzel Ward's good, but other than that, it's pretty rough back there. It really is, and Cook should have a really good game, and he's been actually very solid for about a month now. He hasn't had less than 9 targets in the past 4 weeks, and you can throw a 12-target game in there as well. So Cooks, I'm definitely in on him versus a pretty poor pass defense. And if you're looking at how they've done versus wide receivers this season, they're giving up the second most points per game at 47.2 points per game and over 200 receiving yards. So Will Fuller, Brandon Cooks, I think you can load both of those guys up with Deshaun Watson this week with some pretty good confidence. And then going down, we have Deontay Johnson at $5,200. Now his numbers, I say this every time, but they're going to be a bit skewed because he's left so many games this year with injuries, and it counted as a full game, and it's going to lower his target share, his targets per game, all of that, because it skews those numbers a bit. But in the games that he's been healthy, he has around a 30% target share. You can kind of bank on double-digit targets almost, and still in the season he's at 7.5 targets per game, but again, those numbers are skewed a little bit. But Deontay Johnson, he's a talented wide receiver. Ben Roethlisberger loves getting him the football. It's a good matchup versus Cincinnati. And on the season, they're more so mid-range versus wide receivers, but they are 20-50 V versus the pass. And Johnson, I just think, is a bit too cheap at $5,200, so I definitely have interest there. I think you can play Chase Claypool as well. Now, if you want a absolute punt option, we have Grant here at $3,000. And Preston Williams, he's on the IR, so that's definitely going to open up some opportunity for Devontae Parker needed more opportunity, but Devontae Parker, Grant, and $3,000, he's going to be involved in the offense. And on the season, Preston Williams had a 27% market share of the team's air yards, so there's definitely some opportunity here, and Grant, he is free. He should get a handful of targets, and that's good enough for me. Now, the Chargers versus wide receivers this season, they give them the 9th fewest points per game, but this is mainly just a price play. And if you play Grant and Mike Davis in the same lineup, you can literally do whatever you want. So it's definitely a nice open week and definitely some good value on this slate. And speaking of value at the tight end position, a lot of these guys are just a little bit too cheap. Darren Waller, he's the obvious spend-up tight end, but I'm not going to really go too in-depth there. He's just going to get plenty of targets each and every single week. And I do think that game could be pretty sneaky for fantasy purposes. It's got a 15.5 point over-under. It's no Cardinals versus Bills where it's at 56.5, but 15.5 is not that bad. And a lot of those guys in that game are pretty cheap. Another guy in that game, on the opposite side, we have Noah Fant, $4,900. We should get close to, 6 to 10 targets here for Noah Fant. It's a good matchup versus the Raiders, one of the worst defenses in the league this season, versus the pass and versus the run. So Noah Fant, if you want to use Drew Lock, it could be a decent stacking option there. But to be honest, I see myself either going with Ingram, Goddard, or Austin Hooper, and I'd have an emphasis on Evan Ingram and Dallas Goedert. I just think those are the two best tight end plays on the slate once you factor in their price and just really the matchup, and they're in the same game. But actually, which is similar to what above. Fant, Waller, same game. Ingram, Goddard, same game. But I like both these guys quite a bit. Ingram finally found the end zone last week, which was first of the season. But this is a great matchup versus the Philadelphia Eagles, who have been one of the worst teams versus tight ends this season. They're 29th versus tight ends, allowing 17 Draftkings points per game. And we know Ingram's going to be involved in the offense each and every single week. And Dallas Goedert, he's going to be good to go this week coming off the IR. And he's way too cheap with no Zach Ertz. He's only $4,200. We know the guy's a good tight end. He was a high draft pick. Carson Wentz likes getting the ball to tight ends. I feel like he's a pretty obvious play this week. Now, the Giants have been pretty tough on tight ends this year, but that doesn't concern me. I'm definitely on Dallas Goedert, and I would not be surprised if he's the highest owned tight end of the week. Then Austin Hooper, $3,900. So he was out the past 2 weeks, and then you had the bye week because of the appendix. But the few weeks before that, he had around a 25% target share, and Baker Mayfield certainly likes getting the ball to tight ends. We know Austin Hooper is a talented tight end. It's a good matchup versus Houston, one of the worst defenses in the league. Now, the total did come down. It was at around 29 early in the week. Now it's down to 25.5 for their implied team total. But at $3,900, he should get a handful of targets, if not more. And at $3,900, he should be able to pay off that price tag. Then we move on to the defenses, which don't really matter too much for me. I would say the absolute chalk this week is the Saints at 3,000 going up against the 49ers without Jimmy Garoppolo. They also have a lot of other injuries as well, and they're playing at home, and they're 9.5-point favorites. So I think in cash games, you're probably going to want to find a way to play the Saints, but they're only $3,000, so it's not that hard to do that. The Lions, there's no total out yet for this game, which it's now Friday, so I'm kind of hoping they get a hurry up on that. But they're 4.5-point favorites at home going up against the Washington football team, so it's a decent point per dollar option there. The Eagles, they're favorites on the road, but they're favorites. And then the Packers, 13.5-point favorites at home. And then the Steelers, they just have one of the best defenses of football, and they're 7-point favorites at home. So all these guys check boxes for me, and you have a good spin-up option, you have some upper mid-range options, you have a complete mid-range option in the Saints, then you have a cheaper option in the Lions. And that's going to be it for this video, guys, so I hope it was helpful. If it was, make sure you leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. It really helps me out, and I really do appreciate that. If you want to follow the socials, they're in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. And if you want to support the channel over on Patreon, you can do that in the link down in the description below. You can get access into the entire spreadsheet here, which has the entire playlist listed, not just the ones I'm interested in. If you want to look up a random player like, I don't know, Marvin Jones this week, you can look him up. It's got all of his information there, wide receiver versus quarterback matchup data. It's all on there. I got the projections, the cheat sheet. It's all available in the link down below, and you can hop into the Discord chat as well. And I think that's all I got to say. So I'm going to either get the lineup building video out later this evening, although it's my girlfriend's birthday, so I'm not sure if I'll have time for that. I got to eat, obviously, so we'll see. But either way, we'll have both videos up by tomorrow evening, that's for sure, so you can be on the lookout for those. I'm going to head out of here. Hope you guys have a great start to your weekend, and hope you guys are enjoying Black Ops Cold War if you're into Xbox. I've been playing that all day, and yesterday it was absolutely awesome. So, all right, before I keep rambling on, I'm going to get out of here. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day.